Hi there, and welcome back to the HQ. Today we are going to be reacting to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. What happened? By Matt McMessels. So, I was looking forward to Metroid Prime 4 for years. Literally over a decade. And we finally got it. I mean, we did indeed finally get it. And about a year or so out from having finished the game, or however long it's been, I can't remember exactly, which kind of goes to show how little of an impression it made on me. I think I can say, personally, I was pretty disappointed. Like, in the moment, I felt kind of fulfilled, but at the same time, it's like, it was just a big open desert with a few contained areas and a wet fart of an ending. So I have to know just how bad was the development cycle of this game and what happened to make it this way. So we're going to dive in with Matt and find out exactly what happened to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. All right.
Welcome back to another planet exploring and copious energy crystal absorbing episode.
Don't even get me started on that
happened,
fetch quest ass
pop
shit.
Culture media show that searches for all the action within the video game and
yes.
movie industries.
Yes,
to dig
the
up
search
ancient
action
prophecies
genre.
of past development cycles. And this week we'll be scouring the depths of the barren, but also not so barren planet of Vuros to fill out our maps to chart the progress of one of Nintendo's biggest games of last year, and certainly one of the more controversial. My logbook indicates it's a twisting tale of premature announcements, false starts, developers' switcheroos, questionable design choices, and soaring expectations that proved impossible to meet.
Yeah, all of this. Like, Metroid Prime 4 got the ES, like, Elder Scrolls 6 treatment of being announced way too late, way too early. Like, the way I see it, a game shouldn't be announced until you have like a teaser trailer with a little snippet of what it looks like. If your trailer is the logo that's not even final, the logo on like a pre-rendered background with nothing in the way of actual development, like progress, and it's just an announcement saying, like, we're now working on this. Stay tuned. I don't care. I want proof that the game actually exists before you start hyping the hell out of it. Because then you have cases like this. Like, following this dog-ass pipeline here is exactly how you become a What Happened episode.
So grab the nearest missile expansion and rev up your violas as I answer the question, what happened to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond?
Samus Aran? Hey!
As we all know, Nintendo fans and those that regularly pray at the feet of the almighty Samus Aran, like yours truly.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on Samus, though. Samus, ultimate baddie, Samus can do anything she wants to me. I'm just saying. I got so excited, I poofed up like that. I whole thickened up. But yeah, Samus can do anything she wants to me. Anything. I mean anything. Samus is up there, like, easily baddest bitch in gaming. Samus can do anything she wants to me.
Collectively lost their shit when at the very tail end of Nintendo's big 2017 Summer Direct presentation announced that Metroid Prime 4 was coming. And well, that was it.
Yeah.
Even at this very early juncture, this was rather curious because outside of maybe Bayonetta 3, which also had its own host of development issues.
Also Bayo.
Thank
Bayo
you,
can also get it.
Nintendo doesn't really just show a logo and then peace out, as there's usually some footage or a snippet of gameplay to wet fanboys' whistles.
Usually.
This meant that the title was incredibly early in development, which in retrospect should have been also evident by the fact that even 10 years removed from the last mainline entry, this announcement was still using a very similar font and logo style as the other Prime games, and also didn't even have a subtitle, which
Yeah. The fact that the wait between Metroid Prime 3 and the announcement for Metroid Prime 4 is around the same as the announcement of Metroid Prime 4 and the game's actual release is crazy.
the vast majority of Metroid games did when they were revealed. This is something we've seen before in previous stories I've covered, where generating hype, while extremely important, starts working against you if you announce a product well ahead of it being ready. You know, before the world, if not the designs,
the Duke
have been
Nukem 3D
finalized
effect.
and approved. What Nintendo did confirm is that Retro Studios, the developers behind the original trilogy, were not involved with this new entry, as the intention was to kick off a new storyline which, as we would find out a little bit later, was the brainchild of Kensuke Tanabe. Tanabe is a longtime Nintendo producer that's been with the company ever since the late 80s.
And it kind of shows, because spoiler alert for Metroid Prime 4's story, it's almost a year-old game, and it kind of ended on a wet fart anyway, but like, the fact that we finally find out what Silex's grand motivation is for hating Samus Aran, it is just the fact that there was he was a Fed trooper, and he saw a giant gun, and it was like, I want that gun, and got all of his own troops killed to get that gun, and then Samus blew up the gun. And that's why he hates Samus. They couldn't have thought of anything more compelling than that. Say what you want about Nintendo and their games having phenomenal gameplay, they are not fantastic at stories. Nintendo games have always had this component lacking in story. It's why every single Mario game is practically the same story with a different coat of paint. It's why every Star Fox game for the past 20 years, aside for like the ones made by Rare and Namco, I think it was, whoever did Assault, the ones that were 100% made by Nintendo has always been just Star Fox 64 again. And then, like, the only game that they've made recently that had like a compelling, like that actually had like story unique to their franchise was like Donkey Kong Bonanza, and even that was super simple. Like the fact that like their premier story-based series like Metroid got such a wet fart treatment is beyond like understanding.
Was the director of Doki Doki Panic, obviously was the big Nintendo rep on all the major Metroid Prime titles, and most importantly of all, produced Excitebot's Trick Racing. Now, Tanabe
the most important, of course,
really loved, and obviously still loves, Silex, one of the mysterious bounty hunters first introduced in the Nintendo DS exclusive Metroid Prime Hunters.
Then why did he get
also
such
had
an
cheeky
ass
little cameos
storyline?
tucked away in later games. After the completion of one of those said games, the fan-lauded and globally cherished Metroid Prime Federation Force,
Oh,
Tanabe
most certainly.
wanted to fully kick off a new saga that revolved around Silex, placing him as the new central antag against Samus's role as protag. Tanabe first started playing with
How
this
did that work
idea
out for ya?
seriously in 2016, but once Nintendo's own Breath of the Wild blew players and critics away in 2017 with its hitherto unseen levels of freedom and open-ended design, the plan started to shift to also introduce this concept to the world of Metroid.
Having played Metroid Prime 4, it's safe to say that it failed catastrophically. Because there was no such open-ended design in Metroid Prime 4. It likes to pretend there is. But there's still a very distinct order in which you have to do things in Metroid Prime 4, because it locks off certain areas by upgrades that you have to backtrack to go get. It is just as linear as every other Metroid Prime game, if not more so. It's like what would happen if they took a giant world of like Metroid, like it's like what would happen if they took like Metroid Fusion and made it into a 3D game. It's like that level of linearity. Also, hi Jindras, always happy to see you. Thank you for following me.
And given the reaction to Breath of the Wild, who could blame them? As for why Retro Studios was not involved initially, well, that's because they were plenty busy working on the Switch port of Tropical Freeze, as well as another then unannounced Metroid project, which is a fairly important linchpin to this entire story. There have been rumors for years that a Metroid Prime Trilogy remake or remaster had been fully developed and was just sitting on a shelf for months.
Well, we know that the Metroid Prime 4 remake, Metroid Prime 1 remake was out.
Been the case, at least not fully. Digging into the bowels of the internet through various forum posts and reports by leakers like Emily Rogers has revealed a much more accurate rundown of what was going on at Retro Studios at this point in time and how Prime 4 came to be. In lieu of a full remake or remaster of 3 very lengthy games all in one package, which when you think about it is rather insane.
Yeah, that does sound pretty nutty.
Rockstar couldn't do it correctly. The original plan instead was for Retro Studios, along with a few smaller support teams, to develop a single, very elaborate remaster of just the original Metroid Prime, bringing up all the art and lighting effects to modern standards while retaining the same engaging gameplay.
Now let's hope that they do the same thing for the best Metroid Prime game, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. One of my top 5 favorite games of all time, by the way. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, one of my favorite games of all time. Hands down, no questions asked.
If the market responded to said title and Nintendo then gave the green light, the same TLC would then be applied to both Echoes and Corruption, all released as separate standalone games. Unfortunately though, those plans, like the most well-laid, didn't really work out, and Nintendo had to call several audibles that has led us all to this very episode of What Happened Today.
Yeah, that tracks. That certainly tracks.
With Retro Studios obviously occupied throughout both 2016 and 2017, Nintendo entered a partnership with Namco, who they already had a tight relationship with thanks to their multiple collabs on the likes of the Smash Bros. Series to helm this new chapter of Metroid Prime. One of Namco's Japanese teams and a newly established one in Singapore would share development duties, with some employees having come from LucasArts and the ill-fated Star Wars 1313. Obviously, said teams had zero
that's
experience
a whole
with Metroid,
that's a whole video in
but it was still
itself.
an exciting prospect that the series would be given an injection of new blood. However, this new blood seemed to struggle with what both Nintendo and Tanabe wanted to see out.
Frankly, why would you put New Blood on one of the most anticipated games of all time? Like, genuinely, you have something easily, one of the most anticipated games of all time is Metroid Prime 4, and you want to put the newbies on it? Oh yeah, because that's totally worked out in the past. Like Bethesda taking their C team, handing them Fallout 4, and say, make this into an MMO. Because that worked out so well for them. Also, hi Nikuchi. Welcome to the chat. Happy to see you.
Out of the series, with the most commonly cited major issue being that Namco couldn't seem to create compelling level designs that were up to Nintendo's standards. Now, if you're talking about a platformer or an action game, level designs can sometimes be changed or expanded without much issue.
Yeah,
But when
compelling
you're
level
talking about
designs.
something like Metroid that has featured
Hi there,
tons of
Oni.
iconic environments that were all meticulously crafted and interconnected, you can start to see how Nintendo would lose confidence in the team that had been put together, especially for a series that hadn't seen a new console entry in over 10 years. Thus, in January of 2019, roughly 2 years into the project, Nintendo manager Shinya Takahashi announced that the development of Metroid Prime 4 under Namco was being suspended, the duties passing over to Retro Studios, and that Tanabe was obviously being retained.
That was
This, as
only
you can
after 2
imagine,
years.
was both a worry and a relief to many fans that had been waiting for Samus's comeback to a Nintendo home console, praising Retro's return to the franchise, but being concerned as to why Nintendo and Namco couldn't work things out. In the years following this announcement, reports and rumors started circulating that Retro
I'm
Studios
having a
had
good
put
one,
together
Gucci.
some type of demo or pitch that had been put in front of Tanabe and other Nintendo higher-ups.
Like, how bad of a vertical slice do you think it had to have been for them to just shoot it down so hard that they decide to pivot back over to Retro Studios? How bad do you think it had to have been?
In the hopes that they would snag the job to lead on Metroid Prime 4. This was the rumor at the time, but in a 2021 post from a vetted user named Belmont, it seems that this wasn't entirely accurate, and instead presented a much more likely scenario given what we know now in 2026. Since Retro were only actively working on remasters circa 2019, this left their few engineers and designers with precious little to do for the foreseeable future. Because, if you recall, the original plan was to remaster Prime 1, 2, and then 3 in standalone releases, so that was a resource that wasn't being properly utilized.
Yeah, that does kind of make it a bit more understandable on how it crashed and burned as hard as it did. Because it's like, Retro Studios was just predominantly being like used for remakes and remasters and stuff like that. So naturally, they wouldn't have like all the people they had. Like, I don't know what their staff retention looks like, but the fact that they already like were missing that many people, like the fact that they were only working on remakes and not working on like things like that. Yeah. Yeah, that does give me pause.
So, to help alleviate the level design struggles Namco is having, a small team from Retro was brought on to assist them sometime in 2018, and that's when it occurred to Nintendo management that maybe the entire project should be developed in-house by them. But the problem was that Retro was simply not staffed up properly to take on an entirely new, elaborate game by themselves. At least not yet. So, if the Morph Ball was to be picked up by them and carried into
so they
the
had to build
Shoujo
staff
end
first.
zone, everyone involved knew it would take a lot of additional time, as not only did Retro and Tanabe need to reconnect and get up to speed on his new vision, they needed to swell up their ranks with even more artists, programmers, and designers, which again was something that wasn't going to happen overnight. In fact, for several years, the only Metroid Prime 4 crumbs Nintendo fans could scrape up from off the floor was the occasional update to someone's LinkedIn or Retro posting about an open position. But just like Samus inconveniently losing all her powers at the worst possible time, the COVID-19 pandemic, which kicked off its worldwide tour just a year later, obviously put a serious damper on things.
Yeah, that is definitely not good. Not gonna lie, that it kind of slipped my mind that happened. And then, of course, you think about all those games that were in development in the late teens, and then you kind of come to realize just how many projects were negatively affected by the pandemic like that. Also, hi there, Sarah Micah. We are just watching this episode of what happened on Metroid Prime 4. And yeah, so far, development ain't looking good already. We got circumstances outside of their control, like the pandemic. We have circumstances in their control, like not hiring the right people and having to pivot to the studio who always made the games instead of, Namco.
And so, Retro, we need to painstakingly fight through it until development started running smoothly again. Tanabe himself outlined all the pandemic-related challenges they faced in a December 2025 interview after the release of Prime 4, revealing that Nintendo's regular in-person trips to all their partners working on projects were obviously all postponed. With said meetings having to then be conducted online and with only one interpreter on hand, which meant meetings would sometimes last for several hours.
No, I don't think there's any annoying glasses, guys.
Those hours stretched into years as Metroid Prime 4 entered a long period of silence, specifically from early 2019 all the way to mid-2024. But even when it was re-revealed,
I mean, really, we're lucky. We're very lucky just how many Metroid projects we got between the the teaser reveal and Metroid Prime 4 actually coming out. Because, we got Metroid, Samus Returns, we got Metroid Dread, we got the Metroid Prime remake. Yeah, pretty much. It had that Duke Nukem Forever treatment.
A quick trailer that Nintendo debuted, which also featured the new subtitle of Beyond, really didn't give too much away or answer many of the questions fans had. Tanabe explained that during those 4 long years, the game entered a deep period of trial and error, with many of its design tenets coming directly from him, which was a change from previous Prime games of the past.
Thank you, Coochie. It's funny, I actually have a drive on my I have a drive on my Twitter right now to like and share to reveal the design of my 2.0 model that is currently in the works. So if you want to give that a like and a share, it'll bring it one step closer to revealing my new model.
The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was getting a lot of praise for adopting an open world format. Following that, I kept seeing comments online saying, I want to try playing an open world Metroid. However, Metroid's core concept of acquiring new abilities to expand the explorable space contradicts the go anywhere you want from the start structure of open worlds. Even so, I wondered, was there a way to meet these demands?
Nope, there was not a way.
Area? I also thought that being able to exhilaratingly ride a bike through that area could add some variety to the pacing of Metroid's gameplay.
Yeah, all that did, adding the desert, all that did was just add a giant time sink that wastes everybody's time. I don't know what you were thinking with that, dog. Also, thank you for the follow, new Gucci. Welcome to the HQ.
Which is usually all about claustrophobia and tension. However, when I later saw Link riding a bike in Breath of the Wild's DLC, my reaction was, no! Now people will think I stole that idea, and I wasn't sure what to do. But then I thought, no, I'm not copying them, and besides, Samus riding a bike is definitely cool.
I mean, yeah, I love a baddie on a motorcycle, but
to make this bike a reality. That, and the inclusion of more talkative Galactic Federation friendlies, and the desire to cap off the story with a more morose final ending, were all things Tanabe himself had been pushing for even during the early Namco days, so he definitely knew what he wanted.
Say what you want about them, I didn't mind the NPCs. I enjoyed having, the banter. I wish Samus would have been, I know people don't like it when Samus opens her mouth. Phrasing. But, yeah. I feel like if Samus would have not been, crazy talkative, but, kind of, one line, short with the Fed troopers, maybe, quiet until she opens up to them a bit, and she's a bit more open with them, instead of just being the stern, silent type that just stares at them, because you can't have NPCs that sit there and talk and yap at you, and Samus not say anything. That is incredibly bad design.
The only problem? These were many of the same things that both the press and the Metroid fandom would fire their missiles of ire at when the game finally did release. Now, if you thought Tanabe's desire to inject open-world design directly into Metroid's typical MO of tightly designed biomes and morph ball tunnels, all interconnected and gated off through item acquisition, would clash and be awkward, don't worry,
absolutely.
because it was. Of course,
Absolutely.
throughout the various trailers that were released in 2024 and 2025, it wasn't known how progress would work. But when many finally got their hands on the game when it released in December of 2025,
Yeah,
a
it
common
did
complaint
not
was that
work.
This combination didn't really coalesce. When
Yeah,
we
it
got
did
down
not
to
work
brass
in the
tacks,
slightest.
The environments you explored and beyond were spread far apart by the large open desert known as Soul Valley, which acted more like a Hyrule field dotted with dungeons at various endpoints. But unlike Zelda, which usually populates that open field with characters, side quests, treasures, and adventuring, Beyond didn't offer much by comparison, because
Beyond just had a lot of green rocks and oodles of sand. Yeah. For that, Metroid, the only other game like that was Metroid Other M, and I feel like that game soured a lot of things for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Like, people, in that game, Metroid Other M was a lot more narratively driven, and people didn't like the direction they were taking Samus in, with, like, her, instead of losing her abilities, the fact that she had to have them activated via orders from her old CO. Yeah, it was not great design. Like, they could have had her either lose her abilities or Samus use her own abilities under discretion instead of just waiting for Poppy Adams' boss call. But, like, that and the fact that it did not explore the themes very well. Like, it's pretty obvious with like the return of Ridley in that game after his death at the end of Super Metroid. Well, in Super Metroid, not the end, but in Super Metroid, they were definitely trying to tackle the themes of Samus's post-traumatic stress disorder, which she does have. Samus does have PTSD. Like, don't get it twisted. She does have it. But, like, it was tackled in a very bad way. They could have carried it with a bit more nuance. They could have had better characters, and instead of Samus just monologuing to herself all the time in her own head. Yeah, there was a lot wrong with Metroid Other M that they definitely could have touched up on.
that's not really what Metroid excels at. Aside from 2 enemy types and a few shrine-like underground chambers that would give you supplemental upgrades, Soul Valley is simply meant to be driven through to get to Volt Forge, Fury Green, or the Flare Pool to complete your ultimate objective. Perhaps realizing this, the infamous green crystals were added to said open world so as to give the player something else to do.
Yeah,
but
just to give them a reason to
smashing
drive
open
around in
thousands of
circles.
crystals isn't exactly engaging or meaningful. In
Yeah,
another case
not in the
of
slightest.
doubling down on a not-so-hot idea, Tanabe, Retro Studios, or some madman high up at Nintendo also thought it wise to lock a particular feature behind one of the 3 amiibo figures that launched with the game, which was essentially an intergalactic jukebox. Now, normally this wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
your
was
sweet ride can
super
play some
dumb.
stellar tracks courtesy of musical legends Kenji Yamamoto and Minako Hamano. The problem is that without the amiibo, there was no music at all during the open world driving segments.
Yeah, the fact that the ability to play music in the barren, silent, boring open world was locked behind a $20 amiibo felt like it was just Nintendo just kicking you in the crotch and expecting you to enjoy it. Like, I know some people are into that kind of torture, but I'm not, and I did not enjoy myself.
Making them feel even emptier and more tedious to traverse than normal. A quick fix would have been for the amiibo to simply unlock additional tracks, so I'm not sure about the thought process here, and like, I get how it's Metroid, and you want it to feel isolated sometimes, but they should have given non-amiibo
Yeah,
havers
this is
something. Okay, no, that's too far. Further on in that same Nintendo
ditch the
Treehouse
Limp
interview,
Bizkit, dog.
Tanabe outlined a few other issues that affected development. Originally, a professional writer was hired to pen all of Samus's logbook entries and the various pieces of lore she would come across.
Oh,
But this apparently
absolutely,
didn't work out
Gucci.
too well, and the writer's efforts were ultimately not used. Tanabe then decided to step in and write them all himself, which obviously would take extra time as they need to be translated, with the producer remarking that he felt very rushed during this process. This was picked up by players too, as most of the long entries were criticized to be found rather dry and brief for the most part. On that topic of story, the Galactic Federation, who had been in the Prime series ever since Echoes, is featured throughout. And according to Tanabe, this was done to increase the drama and eventually affect the player emotionally. However, the early previews that were published just before the game's launch, in a great case of backfiring, presented this change in a poor light.
Yeah, like, I enjoyed the NPCs, the banter, the various bits of world building, like having a having like a gruff CO and the newbie, having like the quirky geek who works all the tech and upgrades Samus's shit throughout the game, having like the stoic religious sniper, like having like these different characters to bounce off of. Like, I thought it was one of the coolest things, like finding various like missile upgrades and stuff in the open world, and they're just coincided with Samus just sitting down and listening to the guy's stories. Like, I thought that was neat. The overall game could have been handled a lot better, but I thought it was neat.
As journalists were given the game's opening section to play through, which featured everyone's favorite bumbling engineer, Miles McKenzie. It can't be overstated how these previews damaged the early perception of Beyond, which is a shame because outside the 15-minute sequence where players had to lead Miles to a safe location, he only then appeared sporadically from then on out, specifically whenever you gave him a chip in exchange for a new upgrade. Now, while this isn't any one group's fault, as the 4 Federation officers were sparsely used except for their introduction and at the very end of the game, and the journalists for their part were simply just reporting on the section of the demo that was presented to them.
That's all they had, so they had no real way to know.
Things off on a less than optimal foot. It's just one of those things. Obviously, Beyond still had some great aspects to it, as evidenced by its still mostly positive critical reception. Technically, it stands as one of both the Switch and Switch 2's most outstanding games in terms of technical performance.
Oh, most certainly.
A 120 FPS mode, 4K resolution, mouse controls, as well as stunning character models, art, and lighting effects throughout.
Oh, absolutely. How they were able to make something like this run on the Switch 2, like, is beyond me.
The soundtrack, as mentioned earlier, is among some of the series' best. And finally, regardless of whether you were using detached Joy-Cons, handheld mode, or with a Pro Controller, utilizing Samus's abilities or doing donuts in the viola was as smooth as butter. Commercially, it seems to have performed relatively well for a Metroid title, selling over 1 million copies as reported back in February, although that still lags behind the performance of Dread, which has since moved over 3 million. So, while the reaction to all these changes Tanabe instituted were certainly mixed, it turns out he may have known they would be, as he designed the game he specifically envisioned before exiting the video game industry altogether. In January,
so my man designed a game he knew people wouldn't really enjoy, and it was like, okay, peace out. Dog.
of this year, he announced his retirement from
Oh my
Nintendo,
God.
naming Risa Tabata as his successor, which, regardless of how you feel about his body of work, at least this retirement was well earned, as he had been with Nintendo for over 38 years.
Oh, yeah, most
Unfortunately,
certainly.
though, for Metroid fans, his list of regrets and what he would change while developing Metroid Prime 4 probably is not what most people expected, saying to Nintendo Dream, "I conceived the ending scene of the game first and designed the overall structure around that. To that end,
Yeah,
I
there's your
created the
problem.
Federation troopers who would fight alongside Samus and plan the gameplay so that, as you progress through the game, the bonds between them and Samus, and therefore you the player, would deepen. I actually had even more events planned to deepen those bonds, but due to time constraints, they had to be cut. That is my one true regret." Wow. So, while they
Wow.
both certainly had different career paths and worked on different series,
Yeah,
it
you
seems
had to
that
buy the
Tanabe
music
shared
for the
plenty
bike
in
section,
common
Sarah.
with Yoshio Sakamoto when it came to Metroid. They had a specific vision, the game they wanted to make, and they certainly made it, even if the final product wasn't what a lot of people wanted.
yeah.
Thankfully, though, the Metroid IP still seems like it's in a good place, with strong rumors that Retro will pick up from where they left off on those remastering duties or moving on to a 5th Prime, or Mercury Steam eventually delivering a Super Metroid remake.
Ooh. Super Metroid remake. That would be interesting to see. Now, personally, what I think Retro should be doing is they should trade off. They should, now that they've done Metroid Prime 4, they should do a remake of Metroid Prime 2, and then carry forth the resources from both of those into making Metroid Prime 5. And then do a remake of Metroid Prime 3, which will have a more traditional gameplay style and mouse controls. Hopefully they don't try to reincorporate all of the motion controls, because I would love to just play a game without having to get a workout in, yeah?
Which, given Nintendo's recent penchant for remakes, might
Oh, yeah.
indeed be likely. Whatever
Most
it is,
certainly.
though, the Metroid fan base, much like the legendary bounty hunter herself, has proven to be nothing if not resilient. And
Oh,
if you
yeah.
out there know of any other stories throughout the wide galaxy you'd like me to cover, shout them out in the comments below or enter the high-tech spaceship that is my social media. See you next mission, and thanks for watching!
So, that was Metroid Prime 4. A lot of stuff I kind of knew. I didn't really have all the details, but yeah, seeing the full breakdown of the whole development cycle of this game is honestly pretty eye-opening, to just how bad things got pretty quick. Between the developer switch, the pandemic complications, and then just a director who obstinately stuck to their goal regardless of how they thought it would be received. And plus, like, the current woes of, like, a post-Satoru Iwata Nintendo and how they've been operating. Yeah, it makes sense how Metroid Prime 4 turned out to flop at, like, the way it did. Like, I wouldn't say critically, because people still enjoy the game. I still enjoy the game. It's just, like, I thought it ended on a wet fart. Like, the more morose ending didn't really hit with me, because it just felt anticlimactic, how where, like, you fought all the way to the end and the game just ends with you planting a tree and saying goodbye. Yeah, I mean, hopefully they get the chance to unfumble the ball with Metroid Prime 5. Hopefully we get a Metroid Prime 2 remake first, because I want to play a remake of my favorite game of the Metroid franchise. But yeah, that's what happened in Metroid Prime 4. Let me know what you thought about that in the comments down below. And of course, do not forget to hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and ding that bell so you know when I upload, and it helps me out in the algorithm. And as always, I will see you all next time at the HQ. Bye-bye.